Okay. So last we left off, as I recall, um, you guys had an interesting couple days in the city of Baldur's Gate and met some new friends, let's say. Um, some of you made some better new friends than others. You went on something of a fruitless hunt for a certain warlock. Uh,
Sad.
yeah, for now. And so this is, yeah, I guess that is the map I want to be on. Last we left off, as I recall, you guys had all managed to make your way back to the Icewing Manor. Callus was healed up by a certain priest of Lathander, priestess, I guess. Uh, and yeah, you guys, Elizabeth ended up, you know, dressing for a fancy party at the
Dressing to impress, not realizing there was a party.
right, yeah. And you and Asher have arrived and sat down to dinner at the Icewing Manor with Callus and Sildara Icewing, with Grigwin in attendance. I believe Alton is dressed for eating as well. Um, and
Behold the power of magic.
True, yes, looking like a handsome, devilish little rogue in his red jacket. I love that little picture, by the way. Um,
He has a head cook to impress.
that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Bakes some bread of his own.
Yeah, you guys, and you're being cooked for completely. Like you're out. I mean, if you have stepped foot near the kitchen, you have been summarily removed. This is partly an audition for a new chef in the Icewing Manor, and so food is being served in several courses. And as I recall, food was being brought out, and shortly thereafter there was a knock at the front door, and Grigwin left the room to go. Um, Investigate to see who is at the door. I believe you guys could hear from the dining room a certain accented young man at the front door, and I think that's where we left off. Unless there's anything anyone wants to add.
Nope, sounds right to me.
Okay. And just for clarity's sake, Reginald, you're there as well, correct? At the dinner
Yeah,
party? Yeah, you were there. That's right. Because the men and the males
I
and the
was mostly
females,
just chatting, yeah, with
Callus,
Callus and
catching up the two of you. Absolutely. Um, and I definitely imagine, Reginald, that Callus would basically insist that you sit. As I think I described, like normally Callus and Sildar would sit at other opposite ends of the table. That is not the case. Callus is sitting at the head of the table. Sildar is directly to his left, and I think Reginald he would ask you to sit directly to his right.
oh yeah, I'll do that.
And Selenda would be placed next to her mother. Grigwin would probably be directly across from Selenda. I'm realizing I should have created a map for this, but that's okay. Um, and then, of course, I think Elizabeth, you would probably be on the side with Grigwin. Alton, if you wanted to, Alton, you could be sitting next to Selenda, unless there was somewhere you'd rather be.
That works fine.
Okay. Um, and just for clarification's sake, Valem, where are you? What are you doing while this is happening? Because I know you're not attending the dinner.
Yeah, Valem was just kind of off on his own. When people started coming in, he probably left. I don't know if there's a room that he would be able to go to, or otherwise, if there's like an outdoor, maybe a back porch or something,
Oh yeah, I mean there would definitely be
he'd
like
just
a
go hang out.
small sort of alcove out back,
Yeah,
maybe with some flowers or what have you, some trellises and some flowers, what have you. But it's relatively small. It's definitely not like a very large garden by any stretch.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you're sitting out there, Bellion. What are you doing? Where are you? On the roof,
Yeah, still on the roof, doing his thing. He's currently talking to his head.
talking to his head.
It's Wolfhead. He's totally talking to it.
Okay.
You
Do,
know
do
what
you
I'm
do you do that thing where you literally pull it off and place it on the ground facing you and put?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
They're just chilling out there talking to it.
Okay. Yeah, and the sun is like almost completely setting at this point. The sky is, all purples and deep dark reds. Um, I can't believe Gwen is not back yet. Hopefully she didn't lose her internet. Okay, so what's Elizabeth? You're sitting directly next to Asher. Like he would of course sit next to you. Um,
And I'm assuming Greegwin's on my other side then?
correct.
Okay.
Um, And I think Reginald Callis is probably like talking to you, asking you about, he's trying to, as best as he is able, he's trying to get back into a headspace that he understands. So he's asking you about the city. He's asking you about the parliament. He's asking you about business. I mean, he's all questions.
Yeah, and I won't know too many answers about Parliament since I'm not actually in it anymore. But
Yeah.
I'll tell him, what I know. Oh, old Frankson, he retired and blah blah blah, and so and the few things I do know about random people, I'll just be filling him in.
Yeah, and the two of you are basically doing that catch-up thing, and he's asking you about your son and your daughter-in-law and how your house is and that sort of thing. And it doesn't take long for the two of you to get into a sort of rhythm. It feels almost natural. And I think the entire time Sildar is basically sitting there, and she's basically got her hand on Callus like the entire time. Like she's got her hand on his. They're like basically holding hands on top of the table. And Grigwin, gets up to go into the door. And Elizabeth, what are you doing when this is happening?
Mostly she's just kind of tense and uncomfortable, and she's trying to figure out, like, she's sitting next to Asher and she's just thoroughly embarrassed because this is not how she was expecting the night to go. The doorbell goes off and she actually goes to answer it, just kind of like, until she sees Grigwig get up and just kind of blinks.
Yeah, like there's like a
Like,
reflex.
she's so awkward.
Right, there's a reflex where you go to stand up, and Grigwin like immediately like pushes her chair back and begins to stand. And I think she probably puts her hand on you a little bit to be like I got this. Like she doesn't say anything, but like she's the lady of the house. Like she'll get the door.
Yeah, and Beth just kind of gives a slight nod and mutters an apology, and
Yeah, and I think when you kind of like turn back to look, Asher's kind of got this like little bit of a like sly smile across his face because he sees you being awkward, and this seems to give him a little bit of pleasure. Alton, what are you doing?
Honestly, right now, I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on because I've been kind of trying to do my own thing, and now I'm at a very fancy dinner party that I was in no way prepared for.
Okay.
So I'm looking around, trying to get a feel for the room, and debating how badly I should tease the ladies.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, so I think there's kind of a pause, and you hear some mumbling coming from the front door. And I think a minute passes, and like Grigwin reappears, and she goes to like introduce what we know to be Alistair, but she doesn't know what to say. So everyone.
I'm back!
Oh, there you are.
My fucking internet decided to hate me.
Oh, we had assumed that you were jumping in the pool and forgot to come back.
No, my internet decided it wasn't gonna work. It's like, no, fuck you. And then my computer decided it was gonna shut down on me.
It really doesn't want you to play today.
Fuck you, computer.
So
fuck you, Athena.
Just a quick recap because we barely got started, Gwen. You guys are at the dinner and everyone is sort of settling in, and there's some awkward tension, and then we hear the knock at the front door, and Grigwin goes to answer the door. And while she gets up to go answer the door, you guys hear his voice and you know who it is. I imagined, and you weren't here for this, Gwen, but like at the table, your father is sitting at the head. Your mother is directly next to him instead of sitting opposite him like she normally would. And the two of them are basically holding hands on the table. I imagine you're sitting next to your mother.
Probably.
And then Alton is sitting next to you. On the other side of the table, Reginald is sitting opposite your mother. And then there's there's Grigwin, and then Elizabeth, and Asher. And then we said Alton was on the other side of the table.
Alton's the next. You said Alton was next to me.
He is, yeah. He's he's technically across from where like Elizabeth is. But yeah, he is next to you. Yes, he's sitting next to you. And you're kind of sitting there, and you hear the knock, and then you hear the voice. What are you doing?
If she hears the voice, she'll stand up and go as well.
Oh yeah, and I think your mother, like when you go to stand up, she kind of like pulls you down, like in that very motherly fashion, where she's basically pulling on your dress, like where do you think? And she kind of leans over, and she just like whispers to you, "Darling, Grigwin will get the door. Just patient."
Fine, mother.
Okay. And yeah.
Rude to him.
and Grigwin like walks to the to the room, to the entrance to the dining room, and there stands next to him Alistair. And I think I described this a little last week, but Alistair, he's basically still wearing what he mostly always wears. It's maybe a little cleaner than it was. It's still that kind of military cut. He is walking with a cane. It's a fairly decent cane. It kind of gives you pause as to where he got it. And I think he's probably wearing a top hat because he just assumed, of course, that that's what you do. And he's standing there, and there's like a very sudden pause in everybody. Like Reginald and Callus are having a conversation, and I think Reginald Callus just immediately like stops and looks. And Sildara doesn't seem terribly phased, which maybe you take note of, Selenda.
I mean, she knows about him.
Right, exactly.
Celinda is probably looking back and forth between her father and him, like, shit, this is gonna be fun.
Okay, sorry, I'm just checking my OBS because it decided to recognize my.
It really likes your other.
Okay, all right, can somebody say something? Anybody?
Hello.
Okay, so it probably doesn't matter, but yeah, I wanted to make sure it was fixed. All right, so it should be good. Anyway, so Alistair's there, and I think immediately like his eyes meet yours, Selenda, and he gives you like this little shit-eating grin. Like he can't even hide it. Like he's not even being coy about it. And he kind of tries to give this like formal, and that's heavily in quotes, formal bow to the group, to the whole room.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks around. He said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry I'm late." And your father's like eyebrows just perk up a little bit, like he's confused, and your mother just like gives him a little gentle nod, and your mother actually says, "Of course, I understand. It's tough traveling in the city these days. Would you like to have a seat?" He said, "Of course, ma'am. Right. Whereabouts should I
Alton.
And then, no. I think, oh, no. Before you say that, your mother says, "Oh, there's an open seat right next to Alton there." And she's indicating that there's another chair on the opposite side away from you, Sunlinda.
Oh, and scoot down. Please.
I will just smirk a little bit, and Celinda's been good to me, so I will scoot over a chair.
Yeah, and I think there's a brief moment, like when Alton, you're turning to scoot, you just barely catch like the dirtiest look from her mother. Like Sildar's like glaring at you, like don't move, but it's already too late. You're moving. Yeah, and Alistair kind of like hobbles in with his cane, and he takes his hat off, and he like goes to hand it to Grigwin, and there's like immediately a flash of anger and frustration across her face. And she just takes it and like tries to smile. And she just like very casually, like basically throws it onto a table in the front foyer. And Alistair kind of circles around. He looks to you, Reginald. He gives you like a head nod. And he sits himself down next to Selenda. And he looks at you and he's got this big wide grin on his face. And I think like he turns and he sees Asher. And there's definitely a weird vibe there between the two of them. They've been through some shit together.
I can imagine.
And so Callus says, "Well, everyone, thank you for coming. It's a time for celebration, and I wish to be with people that helped free me and my darling wife." And he like looks over, and there's like a sweet little intimate moment between the two of them. Some of you are old friends, and he looks to you, Reginald, and gives you like a nice smile. And most of you, I'm afraid, are new friends. I owe all of you a great debt of gratitude. And like he's like making eye contact down the table. He looks at you, Elizabeth. He looks at Asher. He looks to you, Alton. He kind of looks at Alistair, but very quickly like moves to Selenda. And instead of like smiling at you, Selenda, he sort of just like cocks his eyebrow a little bit as if to say like, "What are you doing?" And then he looks to his wife, and he at this point the glasses have all been poured. He says, "If you all would, I would very much like to toast to all of you." And he raises his glass.
Out of curiosity, what's in the glass?
Oh, it would be. Well, you know what? Reginald would. I mean, it's up to you. I'm gonna let Reginald answer that one.
Well, it depends on what's for dinner, but
Like, would you have
It's-
brought any?
I definitely would have brought a couple bottles, like a white and a red, and
But it's alcoholic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
yes, of course,
Okay.
it's wine. It's
Yeah, it's,
Okay, so
yeah.
it's wine. Okay.
I mean, unless you explicitly asked. I mean, there would be, a pitcher of water, in empty glasses if you needed it.
No, I just want to. I gotta. Yeah.
Sorry, that picture made me laugh. Just like a pitcher of root beer in the table. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, reminds me of Chuck E. Cheese's. So, yeah, so there's a pitcher of wine and, some water. But, like, unless you explicitly request something else, they're going to...
No. No, we're good.
Okay, so he raises his glass to all of you, and all the glasses I should mention are kind of mismatched. Like it's not like a whole set of goblets. They've sort of just like scrounged around the house to find what they could. Some of them look like potentially like ancient china. Others look like proper silver goblets. Even the goblets are mismatched. And he raises his glass to all of you, says, "We've all been through quite a lot recently, and I speak for myself only when I say that this is the first time in some time I've felt like myself. I want to thank all of you and just know that my home is your home should you require it." He said, "Here's to, hopefully, great, long friendships, alliances between friends and family." And he raises his hand to cheers all of you, to toast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
I toast
Alistair...
for the teacup.
Yeah, and I think Alistair, as the very second that he raises his hand to toast, Alistair is finishing his glass of wine, and he realizes that everyone else hasn't started drinking yet, and he pulls it away from his mouth and almost sloshes what little bit is left in the glass, and he kind of looks at you, Selenda, and just smiles.
She's just trying not to just snicker.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple minutes where everyone sort of is given some opportunity just to talk, some casual conversation at the table. The young halfling woman who is the chef, she's got a couple of people helping her, and they bring out some bread rolls and some hors d'oeuvres, as it were. And so, is there any conversation specifically that anyone would partake in as you guys have a couple minutes before proper dinner arrives?
Probably.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, what kinds of things, would you bring up?
Do you want to go first or should I?
You can go first.
Beth's gonna look at the spread before her. Presumably, it's somewhat formal, and see 2 forks and 2 spoons, and kind of she looks at Asher. Doesn't want to show how naive she is to Asher. Leans over to Grigwin. Why are there 2 forks?
Yeah, and I think you can see Grigwin has to fight not to roll her eyes at you, which is pretty difficult for a Dragonborn, but she still fights it off. And she kind of leans over, and she just in your ear as quietly as she can, which is not super quiet, says, "The little fork is for salads, appetizers, that sort of thing. The large fork is for proper dinner."
And Beth just again, she is red, up through the ears, down the neck, nods. Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I imagine, I don't know, you tell me, but I imagine this is a thing where at this point people have started to pull the napkins off of the plates to put on their laps.
Yeah, that she can mock easily enough.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so you guys have this little interaction. And I think
She does very much follow the leader, but at the same time, she doesn't know what to reach for.
Right, exactly.
So she's a few seconds behind everybody else.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I think Asher is, you notice Elizabeth Asher is trying to make a show of not making a show, that he's like staring at you. Like he's having a hard time taking his eyes off you. So he's trying very hard to like engage in conversation. And I think, Alton, you become the target of that sort of distraction. Excuse me. And I think he turns to you out and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't know. We have been introduced, of course." He said,
We have indeed, sir.
Indeed. Yes. So, from where do you hail? Where are you from? What do you do?" And it's like so. You recognize it's like so awkward.
I am going to start answering his questions honestly. You know, hi, I'm actually originally from I was a sailor. For now, I'm currently working as a kind of a troubleshooter, which is not exactly true, but not exactly a lie either. But as I'm saying this, I'm also going to telepathically tell him that if he doesn't stop staring at Beth, everyone's going to notice.
Okay, totally, yeah. So like, I think what happens is that like when that happens, he's like nodding at you, and he like reaches for his glass and he puts it to his lips, and Elizabeth, you hear him like like begin to choke on his wine.
Yeah, and Beth just kind of sits up a little straighter and, looks at him like, "Is everything okay?"
Yeah, and
Doesn't say that, but her eyes do.
and I think like everyone at the table sort of there's like a brief pause where everyone notices and then everyone sort of like looks away because it's rude to stare. And I think like his eyes start to pull to you, Elizabeth. Then he remembers what just happened, and he like turns back and he looks to you, Alton, and just like clearing his throat. He's like, "Oh right, of course, yes. I've never been. Can you tell me about it?" And like it's like you can see Alton, like you can see his neck stiffen from trying not to turn his head.
And Beth is like looking between him and Alton, like, what the fuck did I just miss?
It should be noted that Alton is making absolutely no attempt to hide the shit-eating grin as he answers. "Oh yes, it's a fantastic place. It's a lot like Baldur's Gate in some ways. I admit it's a bit more rough and tumble. The law enforcement in the city is far better thus far."
And like there's a pause where like his face drops. I'm sorry. You believe that the law enforcement in Baldur's Gate is superior, or in Arm?
In Baldur's Gate, believe me when I say law enforcement in Am is a joke.
Yeah, and like he actually like puts his hand to his chest as if like you've really complimented him. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad that you've been impressed thus far. Admittedly, things have been a bit rocky here, but I'm glad to know of it."
Trust me, as a sailor, I visit many port cities. The only city I can say that has a more thorough guard, even by a small margin, is Waterdeep.
Yeah, and like there's a brief flash of like a scowl on his face that he hides very well. And he says, "Oh yes, well, they they do like their splendor after all.
Well, they're cheating. They have a powerful wizard or 20.
Yes, or 20." And it obviously disturbs him a little. Like it's a point of his pride that you just hit.
That being said, it's also not by a large margin by any stretch.
Right, of course not. No. Yes, I've not been to Waterdeep in some time. I try to avoid it at all costs, as others should as well. And he sort of like winks at you like it's like a knowing joke.
I will just nod and grin.
Okay.
You can telepathically. You can turn your head sometimes, just not once every 5 seconds.
Yeah, and like his eyes go a little wide, and he just like a small smile like sets him into his face, and he gives you like a little nod. And so yeah, he's sort of trying to loosen up, but now he's confused. So then we see him kind of turn, and our attention shifts over to like Selenda. What are you doing?
I mean, she's gonna introduce him to her parents.
Okay,
She's
all right.
like, "Father, mother, I don't think we've actually introduced you to my gentleman friend."
And like yeah, I think at this point Alistair's probably like trying to finish off like his second glass of wine, and he kind of turns up and looks, and like puts his wine glass down, and he like rubs his hand on his shirt. Like as if it's sticky or something, and he reaches his hand across the table at your father, which is obviously too far. Like there's no way without like your father standing up off of the table. And I think your mother sort of intercepts because she's closer. And she sort of puts her hand out to him. She says, "Yes, Alistair, it's nice to finally meet you. I've heard some good things about you. Callus, yes, Alistair Callus. This young man helped to save our house." And like you can hear, there's like just an undercurrent of not venom, but like we'll call it diplomacy for lack of a better word. Like she's swallowing the kind of tone of voice she would normally take in referencing a man of this stature. Um,
Is it fair to assume I can tell? I know what languages both of my parents speak.
oh, of course, yeah.
Would they both speak Draconic?
I mean, yeah, I think your mother probably like it might have started out as a thing where your father learned it to try to swoon your mother.
Well, my father is my father's half is the Draconic bloodline, so I'd imagine he would know it.
Yeah, but I mean, after so many generations, like I don't know, like he would know it. I don't know how he would have learned it necessarily, but like he would definitely have a grasp on the language. Like I imagine your mother would have insisted on it at some point.
All right. Well, she's gonna lean over to them, and she's gonna be in Draconic. She's gonna, "Mother, father, I trust him. Just you need to trust me."
Yeah, and your father's a little confused when you say it. Um, and I think your mother intercepts as she does, and she responds to you in Draconic. "Firstly, it's rude to speak in a language that other people do not speak at the table, dear. You were raised better than this. Second of all," and she like glares at you, "this is not another one of those projects of yours, is it? I,
No.
I don't know that I like him any better than that other man. Elf, I should say."
Well, that's too bad. It's not your decision. And she just sits back.
Yeah, and I think Callus like reaches across and takes your mother's hand, and he starts to like stroke her arm to try to calm her down, because your mother's obviously getting a little worked up.
I think when they switched to Draconic, Reginald turned to look at Alistair and he says, "I think they're talking about you."
Yeah, and Alistair smiles at you. He says, "I can only hope so." He said, I'm always under the spotlight." He said,
Would I know Celinda enough to know that her tone isn't exactly kind? Like she's being a little snarly with her parents?
I mean, you could probably reasonably assess that from like her body language and her proximity. Like she
Oh
obviously
yeah,
leaned,
she's not hiding it.
and she leaned into them to whisper, so you know that there's something going on. Yeah.
Yes. Beth starts to say something, but then just kind of looks at Reginald and just kind of bites her tongue, like it's not her place to say,
Mm-hmm.
and continues like playing with her silverware.
Okay, and I think Asher has basically turned his attention to Sildara. Like he's gonna try, make his best attempt at diffusing any sort of tension. And so he's still turned, like he's turned generally facing you, Elizabeth, but he's not staring at you. He's looking at Sildara. And Asher starts up a conversation with Sildara. He says, "My Lady Icewing, of course, I understand you've been through quite a dramatic experience recently. I wish to, lend you any aid you should require. I've got connections in the city. If you need help around the house, I see that you're looking to hire some more people. I can make recommendations." And Sildara and Callus sort of both start to address Asher. And they start to have like a very brief conversation about, like life in the city. And I think your mother probably asks very pointedly Asher about his family. And I think, Elizabeth, you probably take note more than anyone else because you've gotten accustomed to his sort of, demeanor. He tightens up a bit when she asks. And he says, yes, they're well, of course. Retired. He said, but yes, things in the family are well. But yes, I understand. Thank you for your asking, of course. But things in your family seem to have been quite dramatic recently. I do hope that all is well, and I want to extend my dearest gratitude for inviting me. You know, and they have this very like gracious sort of exchange. But it's obvious that Asher is trying to move the topic off of his family.
With his discomfort, and Beth being Beth, hand under the table, she just kind of like put her hand on his thigh more as a comforting gesture than anything else, without realizing how it might look.
Well, I mean, they can't see. Like, there is, of course, like a cloth, so they can't necessarily see your hand.
I was more thinking Goodwin.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. I mean, if she notices anything, she won't say anything. But
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just gonna kind of offer a little bit of comfort without like bringing attention to it, if possible.
I mean, yeah. So, sorry, I thought of a stupid pun. So, yeah. So they're having this like little gracious exchange, and I think, you know, you guys have several minutes, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, and then you kind of hear a bell ring. And you can hear the kitchen door open, and you can smell it before it even gets close to the room. Unbelievably sweet and savory and salty. Like, all these flavors immediately hit all of you. I think, Celinda, that Alistair is basically doing that child thing where he's got like a fork in his left fist and a knife in his right, and he's literally got his fist on the table with his silverware just waiting for the food. And he's probably done that thing where he's taken his napkin and like tucked it into his jacket, like into his collar, rather than putting on his lap like everyone else has done. And you start to hear the footsteps coming from the kitchen. And as has, you know, been established, they are platters and things. They're all mismatched. There's definitely not a consistency here. But that the halfling comes in with two of her assistants, and she like stops right outside of the entrance to the dining room, and she just makes eye contact with Callus, and he gives her a nod, and she gives him a slight smile and a very gentle nod. And her and her two assistants make way into the room. They all split across, so one goes to like the end with Callus, one goes to the other end by Alton, and then one kind of heads to the center as best as they're able, and they start to lay down these platters.
Celinda takes the napkin out of his collar and just puts it in his lap for him. And she just gives it an extra little pat.
Okay, and when you do that, like, he obviously winks at you, like when you like pat the napkin on his lap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like as you kind of turn back, like you can feel your mother staring at you. I think Regwin's probably got her eyes on you too.
No shame.
Yeah. So yeah, so they deliver the food, and it takes them a couple minutes, and they leave the caps on the platters until everything has arrived. They load the table up, and immediately they all go down, and each of them takes like the lid in each fist, and they remove the tops to the platters all at once. And this is like the finest food I think maybe any of you, save for Reginald and Celinda, have ever seen. Like legs of lamb, like candied sweet potatoes and yams. You know, there's actually like a bowl of fresh fruit. Yeah, they bring in more wine. Excuse me. They have like toasted. There's avocado toast because it amuses me.
She already bought her houses. We can afford it now.
There you go. So yeah, it's all fine food. It's all wonderful, and the halfling, again, like with her assistants kind of behind her, they all sit at the table, and then they stand at the entrance, and Callus looks at her and gives her again another stern nod. She gives him a gentle nod, and then her and her associates back out of the room and disappear, presumably back into the kitchen. And again, I think Alistair, before anyone else does, and Celinda, you know that this is faux pas, Alistair immediately reaches for the food.
Alistair.
And like his hand is like right about to grab, like with his hands to grab like a roasted like lamb, a leg of lamb. And like right as his hand is there, he looks at you, and he kind of smiles, and he just slowly like pulls his hand back. And Callus is just sitting there, like, looking at all of you, and he just says, "What are you all waiting for? Eat, eat!" And Alistair's hand just shoots out and grabs the leg of lamb he was going for. Because it seems a little less formal than it might otherwise.
She's just giggling behind her hand.
Yeah, and I think, like, right as Alistair's hand goes for a leg of lamb, like, I think Grigwin's hand shoots out almost as fast. And, like, you see her hand almost grab for the one he's going for. And, like, she looks at him, and there's obviously an exchange between the two of them. And she just sort of gives him, like a look. Not a smile, not... Maybe something like a glare, and he just, like, smiles at her, grabs the leg of lamb and pulls it back, and then she grabs the next one. So you are all welcome to serve yourselves. And...
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys all begin to get your food, and everyone begins to eat. And this, takes some time, of course. And, people try not to talk so much during eating. It's obviously rude.
I'm sure that Alistair has no problem talking.
Yeah, oh, yeah. He's the one who, like, if he's the one who's going to break the silence. And, like, he's got a mouthful, like, of lamb. And he just sort of starts to say out loud, and I think he says it to your parents. He says, I can't make a sensation like I'm talking with food in my mouth, so apologies. He just says to your father, "So, what's your plans then, mate? Back in your house, got business up and running, right? What's going on?" And your father kind of looks up with food in his mouth, and he, like, tries to very quickly like chew his food and swallow, and he looks back. Well, yes, my plan, of course, was to get the house up and running again and get business back to normal. I am a member of Parliament. What is your business, friend? And Alistair, still with more food, like more like he's like shoveling yams in his face. He's like, "Oh, I'm in a procurement business. I find things for people. It's sort of a entrepreneur, you might say." And I think, Elizabeth, like Asher, you can hear him trying not to choke on his food as this is happening.
Beth will engage him, and so I can stop typing this. In slight conversation, since Grigwin proved to be not so subtle, she'll kind of give up the pride and kind of ask him about some of the dishes, and like again, I'm putting effort to be the proper person, but I am so clueless.
Okay, you're gonna ask Asher like about the food and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like what's the avocado toast? Like what's the green stuff? Like,
yeah,
you know.
And I think he laughs, and I think like he'll grab a piece of toast and he'll like spread the avocado and he'll like cut off a piece and he'll like place it in front of your mouth as if for you to take a bite.
Oh, she totally will.
Okay. Yeah, and so you begin to eat it, and it's delicious. It's really quite good. But I do think like you notice two things. One, Grigwin is eyeing you as this is happening, and I think you start to see almost a tension release maybe from Sildara. Like she seems to have noticed, and a very small, gentle smile is beginning to cross her face, and she sees this happen.
That's really awkward, because then, like, so the tension rises behind me to an extent from the Dragonborn, while the tiefling essentially across from me releases the tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she blushes again, because she's not sure if, like, she's doing something improper by doing this, but at the same time, so she's like, so she takes the bite, and then she kind of, like, turns back to her seat and just kind of nods a thanks, fidgets.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. So I think Alistair and Callus are sort of having this back and forth conversation. Sildara seems to be kind of watching you, Elizabeth. Like, she's still eating, and she seems to be paying mind to everything, but she does seem to be paying a bit more attention to whatever's going on between you and Asher.
Shit.
And Alton, what's going on with you? What are you doing? Other than enjoying the food.
I am enjoying the food, most assuredly, and because most of the conversations are going on. She won't stop laughing.
I hear that.
Most of the conversations are going on around me. However, I will look around Alistair and just wink at Celinda and give that grin. And just in her head, you're going to hear a billy goat.
Celinda just buzzed out laughing, just randomly.
Yeah, I think your mother.
There's going to be a spit take at some point during this dinner. I just know it.
Yeah, and I think your mother definitely starts to eye you as you do that, Celinda. Yeah, she definitely notices whatever that happened. Whatever just happened. Yeah, so you guys continue to eat, and there's some very casual conversation. Reginald, is there anything you're doing?
Come on, Reginald, hit on Grigwin. Conrad?
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. Not really anything in particular, just small chatting, and I'm not asking about. I would talk to Asher about Magnus, but I don't want to bring that up at the dinner table because it's not polite dinner conversation.
Sure. Okay. All right, so there's some very casual conversation, and I think there's a lot of conversation from Alistair between your father and he. Sildara is sort of being pulled between watching this conversation between Alistair and Callus, and again Elizabeth, she keeps taking note of you and Asher, and I think maybe toward the end of dinner, I think Asher probably he reaches up Elizabeth and he takes his left hand and he puts it on your back, and he just starts kind of rubbing your back, and he pulls the napkin off of his lap and brings it up and starts to wipe at the corner of your lip because you've got a little smudge. And this definitely again gets noticed. And so Asher pulls the napkin away, but he does not pull his hand away from your back.
And she'll kind of lean towards him a bit because she's become very comfortable with him. Again, there's still the blush when he does that. Oh shit, how did I not notice that? How long has it been there? But she's gonna kind of turn her attention from him to Sildara and give just this flicker of I'm confused. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, and I think that she absolutely I think when that happens, something is going on under the table across from you. You can maybe feel some vibration. You feel something happening, but you don't know immediately what it is, Elizabeth. And you see Sildara's face turn to her daughter, but then she makes eye contact with you, Elizabeth, and she sees this blush on your face and this gentle confusion. And she immediately, this big bright smile crosses her face, and she just crosses her hands together, and her attention is pulled completely away from Celinda, and she just smiles at you and gives you this very sweet motherly nod.
Beth is just baffled.
Aw, mommy likes you.
Okay. Celinda,
I think she also likes her choice in men more than yours.
Yeah, I'm glad someone's picking up on that. So
I totally am as a player. Beth is totally lost.
Yeah. So, and I think at this point, Celinda, when so something starts happening under the table, I think you can feel Alistair basically he puts his hand on the inside of your hip. He's basically almost grabbing you under the table. And I think he just sort of grabs you kind of suddenly. And
she probably jumps a little bit.
Yeah. And I think when that happens, immediately.
Where are they in? Where are they in relation to me?
So
are they directly across or slightly?
Celinda is technically at about a 15-degree angle. She's right across from you and one chair over. Does that mean okay. Alistair is directly across from you. Celinda is next to him. So she's to your left. Does that make sense?
That's gonna. I don't know how big the table is, but could Beth kind of reach out and kick him in the shin?
Yes, that absolutely yes.
It dawns on her suddenly what's going on with Sildara when the side eye, or at least she thinks it does. So she kind of kicks Alistair under the table, or tries to.
Okay. Give me. Let's just say an attack roll to kick him. Okay.
I mean, Celinda doesn't look like she minds.
No.
It has
Well,
nothing to do with that.
yeah, I was gonna say I
That's
don't
kind of
think
picking
that's
up on
what's happening
mommy's
here. Yeah. Um,
mommy's hints.
I mean, she kind of took advantage of her mother being distracted.
I realize I can probably try to do this. We'll see. Yeah. So you kick him in the shin, um, and I think when that happens, two things happen. First of all, Alistair like turns and stares at you, Elizabeth, like he's like glaring at you, but he's so surprised when it happens that Selenda he like pulls, like his fist almost clenches on you, not like in a vicious, violent way, but in a way that's obviously going to get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine because she's got like this dress on that has like a slit all the way up to her hip, so that probably like freaking yanks her leg towards him. She's just like yelps.
Okay. Yeah, and I think at that point your mother like pushes her chair back very suddenly, and I think like you guys are just about done eating when that happens. And your mother like pushes her chair back kind of violently. She says, "Well, if everyone's done eating, I suggest we move into the sitting room for some dessert." And your mother is obviously flustered. Like she is. It's very clear to you, Selenda, she's flustered.
She's really torn. She's enjoying this, and at the same time, she feels bad.
It's up to you. Yeah, she's. I mean, your mother is standing in, and I think maybe even, also that I think Callus probably looks quite surprised. Like there's like a sudden like look on his face. Do I really? Oh, there he is. Okay, I was gonna say, fuck. Um, yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see on the map here. I'm trying. It's probably too late for this anyway. But like, if you imagine the table being between you, like you can see like, Callus would be here, Sildar would be here, Asher would be between you and Reginald, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what. Or no, I'm sorry, Gregwin. I forgot about Gregwin.
Yeah.
But that's the general kind of layout as I'm envisioning it. But yes, Callus looks quite confused and surprised at whatever's going on here. And your mother is not making an attempt to sit back down.
Yes, mother.
And I think Gregwin sort of pushes her chair back and gives a nod to your mother and says, "Yes, of course, lady. I'll clean up." And Callus sort of says, "No, Gregwin, I believe that the help will clean up." And like there's a weird like look on Gregwin's face, like it's surprising her suddenly, like she wasn't expecting that. And then Gregwin like pushes her chair back in, like without sitting down. She pushes it back into the table. Of course, sir. Of course. And she like goes around to the table to help Sildara like walk away from the table. And I think when she does, like she's gonna push in Sildar's chair, and she puts her hand on the back of your chair, Selenda, and begins to like forcibly pull your chair back from the table.
She stands up, but she immediately gives her hand to Alistair.
Okay. Yeah, and Alistair's like still, and there's maybe still some food on the table, like not a lot, but there's still some. And he looks at you and like looks at the food, and he kind of shrugs and pushes himself out, and he stands up with his cane. But he does reach for another croissant and like shoves it in his face very quickly. But yeah, he will take your hand.
How about I give you a tour of the house? I don't feel much like dessert.
And Sildara, like, she nopes at that pretty hard. She says, "Daughter, it's rude to our guests." And Alistair's like looking very confused. He's like, "Yeah, it's all right. I've seen the house."
Oh no.
And Sildara's looking at you, Selenda, like pointedly. What do you want to do?
Well, it's not the same as having a guided tour, but I guess.
And I think like when you say that, Sildara like gives a nod, and Alistair says, "Well, I suppose that's true." He said, "Last time I saw it making my way around. We're under attack." And like Gregwin like elbows him hard in the ribs. And like he like shudders back and looks at her, realizes his mistake, and just like looks at you and like tries to smile. And I think, oh, you know what happens? Asher actually stands up and looks to Sildara. Actually, no, Asher Asher would stand up first, and Elizabeth, he would offer to pull your chair out with you still in it. Like he would offer to help you up.
And she would, but as soon as she stands, I think she's gonna kind of just touch his arm gently and so, excuse me for a minute, and she's gonna round where this conversation's happening between Sildara and
Well, like
Celinda
it's like
and-
right across the table. Like you're still in the same room together.
Oh, I know, but she's going around the table, and
Okay.
she's gonna grab the hand Alistair has on the cane and look at the two ladies and go, "Can I have a word with him for a moment?" And then pull Alistair like down around a corner or something.
Okay, like out of the room. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And Asher, like as you're like walking out, Asher's looking terribly confused. And I think he says to like no one in particular, he says, "Oh, well, I would have rather liked a guided tour, but all right. Would you like to take me, ma'am?" And he's like looking at you, Celinda.
Um,
And I think at this point, Sildara like crosses her arms.
No.
And like I think you hear audibly like Grigwin try to stifle a sigh. And your father stands up. He said, "Oh, well, if you would all like a tour, I would be more than happy to. Please, Lord Hayden, come with me. I'm happy to show you around. I'm so sorry. It was quite rude of me not to have done that."
Perhaps Elizabeth should show him around.
And Callus sort of stops and looks. He said, "This isn't Elizabeth's house, dear."
She's been here long enough.
He said, and he just sort of cocks his head and like shakes his head like he's like really confused. Like obviously your father doesn't know what's going on here. And he just sort of ignores you pointedly and turns to Asher. He says, "Would you like, sir? Please, right this way." He said, "Reginald, would you like to go with us?"
Oh, that would be lovely, yes.
Okay. So yeah, like Callus sort of heads you like walks out with you to the foyer and of course they've started to put up like old paintings and like old portraiture of the family. So Callus starts like pointing out members like, "Oh, this is my great great grandfather and this is Sildara's great aunt who's also a dragon." And like there's this sort of thing.
His great grandmother is a dragon.
I was being general, but yes, you get the idea.
As we're all excusing ourselves, Alton is going to push out his chair as best he can, considering they were made for people just a touch taller than him.
Mm-hmm.
And thank Lady Icewing for her absolutely prodigious hospitality.
Lady Icewing or Baroness Icewing?
Both ladies.
And I think Sildara walks over to you and she like bends over and she puts her hands like she tries to take your hands in hers. As if like a gentle woman might, and she looks like directly into your eyes, Alton. She says, "No, Alton, thank you. You've been a good friend to my family in times of need. You know that if you need anything further, I don't have endless resources, but I'm happy to offer them in whatever way I can."
The offer is appreciated, lady,
And
but you've already given me so much.
She says, and you do seem to have a way with them. And she like looks to make sure like nobody can necessarily hear her. And she kind of winks at you. She said, "You do seem to have a way with barnyard animals."
Slinda's glaring at her mother
I
right now.
most assuredly can. If you need a demonstration, by all means, simply ask.
I will, of course, keep that in mind. And like the whole time she's smiling, like the entire time. Like she's just so happy that someone else gets it, Okay. So there's like Reginald and Callus and Asher have sort of. I think at this point he's probably taking you upstairs. Like he's leading all the Asher and Reginald. He's taking you upstairs. He's gonna start showing you like the guest rooms and
This is probably a tour I had it like 20 years ago.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
I haven't.
And
Yeah.
not only is it a tour you've been on, literally nothing has changed.
Yeah, well, it's changed because it was empty for when I first showed up here
Well, sure,
a week
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
But now it looks like it started to. Yeah, it's starting to look like it used to, exactly like it used to.
Exactly, yeah. Like it's being like rebuilt brick by brick, exactly as you remember it from 20 years ago. Yeah, and he's like showing you all the rooms and everything else, and he's quite pleased with himself, And again, like this is about like him starting to feel normal again. So while that's happening, I think Elizabeth and Alistair come back into the room, and Alistair looks suitably chided. He's still got his cane, and um, I think he walks over to Sildara. He says, "I want to apologise to you, ma'am, if I've been particularly rude. This is not my sort of environment. I do want to thank you for a great evening and delicious food. If it's all the same to you, I would like to excuse myself for the evening."
Elizabeth, what did you say to him?
And
Beth's just kind of leaning against the arch of the into the room, arms crossed under her chest, just watching this interaction.
and Sildara looks at him, and she's trying to choke down an obvious smile, and she says, "Well, no, dear, of course not. Please don't leave. We've got desserts and some coffee, possibly some tea." And I think Alistair kind of looks away from her and looks at you, Selenda, and he he looks maybe a little dejected. I don't know. He's definitely a little sad. He said, well, and I think he's looking at you, Selenda, for a little bit of support. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to do anything?
She's just going to say, yeah, stay. We haven't gotten to talk much.
All right. Well, right. I can stay for a little bit. Thank you, Baroness Icewing. And she gives him a little nod, and she kind of turns, and I think as she's leaving the room, she's going to go over to the sitting room. Elizabeth, she of course has to pass by you, and she looks over at you, and she puts her hand on your hand, this very gentle, soft hand, and she gives you a very soft smile, and she kind of leans into you and just gives you a tight little squeeze, a tight little hug.
Beth will return it.
Okay. Yeah, and then she just with that leaves the room and begins to head over to the sitting room.
She'll probably actually turn and follow because she knows Alice. I'm assuming not Alistair. She would have heard that Asher's getting the tour from Kalis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure. All right. Yeah. So you're left, Selenda, in the dining room with Alistair. Alton, Alton, did you leave? Are you still in there?
I am sticking fairly close to the Baroness, to be honest, and looking for that little halfling cook so I can compliment her.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so you can follow her in, and Grigwin is already starting to set up the sitting room and pulling out platters and what have you for the tea and crumpets and what have you. And yeah, so Selenda, you're left in the dining room with Alistair. And I think you're alone in there. I don't think anyone else is there.
I think she's gonna just take his hand.
Okay.
I'm sorry if my family. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, and he kind of leans into you and he says, "Nice, it's all right. I realise now this is never going to work. I mean, you're all prim and proper, I don't really fit in here."
I don't think I fit in here much sometimes myself.
And he laughs, he audibly laughs, in your face. He says, "Don't sell yourself short, love." He says, "I think you do just fine right here." It's I don't want to give you the wrong impression, I'm just a poor boy, urchin from the streets and all that.
I really don't care where you came from. You should know that.
Yeah, and he says, "I know, but maybe I do care. Maybe I don't want to be the one to drag you down."
Mm.
He said, "You got an important life here. People care about you. It's a good life, I can see myself here in a..." Nah, I can't see myself here at all. It's just all these rules, man. It's ridiculous. And he smiles, and his smile kind of fades away.
But I
He looks.
see you here.
What's that?
I could see you here.
Yeah, and he looks to you. He says, I think you know how I feel about you, but..."
I hope you feel something for me.
Yeah, and he reaches a hand out to touch you, and then immediately remembers where he is and pulls his hand away.
She steps closer to him.
Okay. Yeah, and he says, I don't think you know what you're getting yourself into.
You're not the first man from the streets that I've
Yeah, and like when you
fallen
say that, he
for.
recoils a little bit. Like he takes a step back. He goes, "What? Is that a man?" Like a little too
No,
loud.
no. That's not what I meant. But I know what I'm getting myself into. I understand. And honestly, I don't care what my parents think. I don't care what the rest of the nobles think. I just want to be happy.
Yeah, and he looks to you and pauses, starts to nod. I
I
suppose
trust.
that's a noble goal. And he leans in to like kiss you on the cheek.
She's gonna move her head so he kisses her properly.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And like at first he's gonna pull away, but like he kind of just falls into it. And I think you hear like a clearing of a throat from outside of the room, and Grigwin is standing there with her arms like clenched into fist down at her sides. Tea is about to be served, and like Alistair like violently pulls himself away from you, and he looks at her, and he's actually got a little bit of a blush on his face. Right, of course, ma'am. Right away. He like looks to you, and he tries to put an arm out for you to take it. He's like, "Lady."
You can just call me Celinda.
Uh, right, of course, Lady Cylinder. Like puts his elbow out.
She takes it.
Yeah, and like Grigwin sees this, like immediately like raises an eyebrow, turns hard on the heel, and walks back to the sitting room. And there, like everyone is starting to seat themselves. Callus and Reginald Callus, like this is the full 100% tour. Like he's not missing a speck of dust. So you guys are still upstairs. He's telling you about some obscure like it's like a book of poetry that nobody can read anymore. You know, it's like Paradise Lost or some bullshit.
I like that book.
And like you know he's saying like you know this has been passed down in my generations for years and years, and it's you know just a great tome, and I rather like having it. And you see it's like just collecting dust, like it probably hasn't been opened, and if you opened it, it would fall apart. um and I think you probably noticed, Reginald, that Asher seems to be like a little distracted, like he wants the tour to be over.
Mm-hmm.
But Callus is not like slowing down.
I'll just at one point I'll just kind of lean in towards Asher and be like, "It's about 25 minutes left."
And Callus like doesn't notice you doing this because of course he's so distracted. Like he's off in a corner like going through like books and old pictures and whatever, and like his eyes go wide. And
just humor him.
And like yeah, Callus and initially Asher was gonna like try to excuse himself, and then you say that, and he looks to you. He says, "But I
She'll still be there.
yeah," and he like there's like a obvious shrug. He's like, "All right, of course." And then he just goes back and he like crosses his arms behind his back like a schoolboy, and he's just watching Callus like just go to town on everything in this house.
Skip to the end.
Yeah, he's talking like there's probably like an old lamp or something, that like an old candle like thing that would be used to illuminate a room, and he's talking about like how he bought it at some marketplace 30 years ago when he was a young boy with his father on a trip to a foreign land, and it was probably just a trip to Daggerford or some shit.
Hey.
And he's just going on. He's going on and on. So we cut back to the sitting room, and Celinda, have you and Alistair followed, or are you still in the dining room?
Is he leading me?
I mean, yeah, if you'll take his arm, yeah, he'll lead you into the sitting room.
I guess.
Okay. So yeah, Sildar is already sitting, and Grigwin is still moving around. Grigwin seems a little fidgety.
She is glaring at Elizabeth, though.
Well, I definitely think Sildara would have beckoned Elizabeth to sit next to her, like on the sofa.
which she would do because at this point, any guidance she can freaking get.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alton, where are you? Are you going to make your way to the kitchen?
I'm going to make my way to the kitchen, but speaking as somebody who's probably got his hand hit repeatedly when he entered the kitchen without permission from his mother, I'm just going to lean in the door
Okay.
and give my compliments because they are far better at this than I will ever be.
Okay. Yeah, and this young halfling woman, like her eyes meet yours, and she's a bit surprised, and you see like her two assistants are like leaning over tables or sitting on stools or what have you, just taking a little bit of a break. And she's kind of standing there, and her eyes meet yours. She says, "Oh, hello, sir. Do you require anything?"
No, merely giving my compliments for the finest meal I've ever had.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Like she looks a little confused. She's saying, "Thank you, of course, but uh, are you unfamiliar with this cooking? Are you not?
I am not so noble.
Ah, then I suppose that makes two of us. I don't recognize your accent. Where are you from?
I come from
Ah, far south. I have family down there, I think. And like you can see her like doing mental math, like trying to figure out the family tree. She says, "Well, I used to have family down there." Ah,
I probably still do as well, but I've not been home in a long time.
and she kind of like leans into you a little bit. And her assistants are human, by the way, if I didn't point that out. She says, "I kind of miss being around our kind, don't you?"
Sometimes I admit it's a little tiresome being the shortest person in the room.
Of course. Nothing is built for us here. It's very painful. It's difficult to work, but the pay is good. She like gives you a little wink,
Yes, it is.
and then like realizes that's maybe an inappropriate thing to say given the circumstance. She like coughs. Of
Oh no,
course.
I agree completely. I left home again. My name is Brown Bread. I'm a baker's son. The pay less than good.
Ah, yes. Well, I'm glad that we could both find profitable ventures then.
Most assuredly.
I do hope that my baked goods were up to par. I know that they need shoring up a bit.
They were fantastic. The only woman I've ever met who did better is my mother, and I might be biased.
She smiles and then she blushes a little bit. Of course. Well, if there's anything further you require, please don't hesitate to ask.
Only thing I would hesitate is perhaps asking your recipe, but for now, thank you just for the company and the fantastic food.
Of course. And she like, like backs up and you see that her assistants are kind of like watching this interaction as you like back your way out of the room. Yeah, and Elizabeth Sildara she's basically putting hands on you at this point. Like she's like stroking your hand and trying to calm you down. And I think she leans into you. And Gwen's bird is awake. And she leans into you, Elizabeth, and she begins to like whisper to you, like very casually. She says, "You're doing quite well, dear." She said, he is a handsome young man, I have to say."
Thank you. I'm glad to know I'm not making a big fool of myself as I feel I am.
Can someone hear this conversation?
No, I think your mother's trying to keep it between the two of. I mean, you can see that they're having something of a conversation. I don't know if you can hear it.
But looking at Celinda, she'll say a little more loudly, "I kind of feel like a goat with a bow."
You're acting like a goat with a bow. You
Whoa!
do not need to change for Asher Hayden. He already likes you.
And like
Oh my.
your mother's eyes go wide.
And Beth goes pale.
And I think Callus Callus is upstairs doing a tour.
Mhm.
I think Grigwin looks to you, Celinda, and says, "I think that's enough, lady."
Celinda is visibly angry at Elizabeth right now.
Yeah, and Alistair, I think the blood kind of drains from Alistair's face. And Sildara, doesn't stand up, but she, visibly tenses up. And she says to you, Selenda, I don't see the harm in somebody trying to impress someone else. Isn't that what your friend is doing?
And I'm gonna put my hand on Sildara actually, and stand and look at Selenda. Do you want to talk about this?
Not right now. And she's going to take Alistair and she's going to go ask him to walk with her in the garden.
Okay, sure. All right. And Alistair just kind of looks at everybody and like gives this like quick jerky nod and just like follows you out to the garden.
Beth will pout, cross her arms, and she goes to like cross her legs, but not really sure how to do it under the dress, just ends up crossing her ankles
Okay, sure.
without like revealing way too much.
Okay. Grigwin sort of makes her way over closer to Sildara and kind of like reaches out and takes Sildara's hand and with a, it's a wordless exchange, but they seem to be like trying to calm each other down as this happens. And I think because Valem is out there right in the garden, Valem, you hear them coming toward the garden, like toward the little patio arrangement, whatever. And at this point, I mean, it's getting pretty like a little late, like 9 o'clock. You know. And so the moon is risen in the sky, and it's a very clear night out. It's almost a cloudless sky. Valem, are you doing anything as they approach?
Actually, if it got that late, I probably wouldn't still be out there. I was pondering casting Sending to Selenda, saying my apologies for not attending the dinner, but I needed to be alone, and that I would be back in the morning.
Okay, sure. Okay.
And more or less, I just go get something to eat and get a room at a local inn.
Okay, sure. All right, so Selenda and Alistair, you head out to the garden. I think at this point enough time has passed that the tour is basically wrapping up. So those of you in the sitting room, Elizabeth and Alton, you guys can hear some like footfalls coming back down the steps. And I think like right when you get to the bottom of the stairs, Reginald Callus kind of turns to you. He says, "Oh dear, no, I didn't show you. I have many artifacts in the attic. How could I forget? Would you like to?"
We'll do that some other time.
Yeah, and like you see Asher's like immediately Asher's face goes completely pale, like oh god no, and then you say that and like he and Callus can't see his face but you can, and he like smiles at you and nods. He's saying, Asher says, "Oh yes, Lord Icewing, I do believe tea will be ready soon," and like Callus had totally forgotten about tea and dessert. He says, "Oh." Of course, no. I'm so sorry, gentlemen. Please, and like beckons you to go into the sitting room. So you guys kind of turn the corner, and something has just recently transpired here. It's obviously noticeable to Asher. I think Callus sees his wife and Grigwin looking rather upset. So Callus sort of makes his way over to Sildara, and there's some like muffled whispering going on. Elizabeth Asher immediately makes eye contact with you, sees you just kind of sitting there.
She looks at him and kind of looks away.
Okay. Yeah, and he obviously takes note of it. Reginald, are you doing anything?
Yeah, I'll just kind of look around and see that there's some tension in the room right now, and I'll actually say, Asher, may I have a word with you in the dining room? For only a moment.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, please, after you. And like you notice, like he turns to look back at Elizabeth, like he's trying to ascertain what's going on, but he does follow you back into the foyer.
Yeah, and so that once we're, I'm sorry to take more of your time, but it just comes to my attention that Magnus has not survived his time in jail.
Yeah, and like his demeanor takes a sudden shift. He says, "It's true, I'm afraid. He said, I don't know how it happened. I'm investigating, but to be honest, it's beyond my capabilities. I've never seen anything quite like it. And he like looks to make sure no one is within earshot. And he's taken on a much more professional demeanor.
And so will I too. I'll step more into that professional
Right.
stance.
And he kind of leans into you because he doesn't want anyone else to hear this. He said, his eyes were burned, melted almost completely from his skull. Dear Lord, man, I've never seen anything quite like it. I don't know. Admittedly, I don't know where to begin. I've dealt with cut purses and pickpockets. This is...
Sounds like the work of some unholy magics, which, men of our profession are not usually well equipped to solve.
That's saying the very least, I expect. I mean, I admit I'm guilty, but I'm glad to not have to deal with this situation. As you well know, there's no chance that Magnus would not have been let go, but this is not how I hoped this would end. And
Nor I.
It opens more doors. It more questions. What is going on here in my cities? I've tried to talk to the Parliament. I've tried to explain to them, and either they don't believe it or they don't care. I mean, I just at this point wish someone would tell me what to do.
The Parliament, are they just hoping this to keep this quiet and have it blow over more than anything else?
He said, Reginald, they were the first to offer to pull out the rug to cover up all the dirt. That they just want it done.
Right.
I'm trying to investigate, but they're trying to impede me. As I say, I'm out of my depth here. And, like, he looks genuinely distraught. Like, he's obviously disturbed by this whole thing.
I know you may not like it, and I don't think we're staying in the city much longer, so I would offer to help myself, but...
Yeah, and I think when you say you're not staying in the city, his eyes sort of drift over to the sitting room to where he knows Elizabeth is, but he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, but I know you and Alistair are often on opposite sides, but I think you might find him a useful friend in if the snakes keep posing a threat here.
Yeah, and like he begins to nod reluctantly. I dislike it. I hate to admit it, but I'm afraid you're right. I'm short on friends and many on enemies, so...
And as much as I would like to believe, in the law, sometimes it's not enough to help the people.
I said, I do appreciate your advice, sir. Thank you. It's good to discuss this with someone who understands.
Indeed. Well, I hope things go well for you, but let us get back to the rest of it.
And he sort of like pulls his arm out to beckon you back into the sitting room. So you guys start to head back, and then Alistair and Asher, what's going on? Or Alistair and Selenda, excuse me. You guys are heading out to the garden.
Mhm.
What are you doing?
She's gonna find a bench and just ask him to sit with her on it.
Okay. Yeah. And like, yeah, he sits, kind of like leans his cane up against the bench. And you can see like he starts to fidget with it. Like he's like, hitting the bricks or hitting the bench or like tapping his cane on whatever he can. And he's just kind of like sitting there and he's trying not to like to look at you.
Alistair,
Yeah, and he kind of looks there.
I don't want you to feel like you're not good enough for me.
He's like, nah, it's too late for that, love. Come on now. We're different stations, you and I.
Doesn't really matter. You know I don't like noble men.
Yeah, so I've heard.
They're boring.
He's like, I promise I'm boring too.
No, you're not. I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think I am.
Yeah, and there's like a look on his face where he like looks a little sad. He's like, "You don't have to remind me."
Well, it makes me sad. I don't want to leave you.
Yeah, and he says, "Well, you don't have to leave. You could just stay here with your family. We could arrange some sleepovers, you and I." And like winks at you. He's like, "I don't think your mum would like that very much, though."
No, but I have to help Balaam.
He's like, "Yeah, that poor bastard's in a lot of trouble."
Going to Waterdeep probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I heard that too. Dangerous city, that.
Yeah.
I mean, not as dangerous as here, but I've got things under control. He's got like this like shitty ass grin on his face.
Yes. That's why I like you. You keep things under control.
Yeah. And he like puts a hand on your hip. He's like, "I know how you like it."
She kind of snuggles up to him on the bench.
Okay.
You'll stay with me tonight.
And like there's like a pause and he like stares right into your eyes and his whole body like sags with a sigh. Well, I mean, if you're going to insist on it, I guess I don't have a choice, right? Noble lady asks a
I'm gonna
punk like
insist
me.
on it.
He's like,
Of
well,
course I'm gonna insist on it.
it is what it is, right? I got to do what I got to do.
You have to do your duty.
You're damn right. And like his hand starts creeping up your leg and he like plants a kiss on you. And
Mhm.
as you're like a minute passes as you guys are like snuggling on the bench, he pulls away. He goes, "Well, I don't think you want to do it out here. I mean, I'm all for it, but," he said, "there might be people
I thought
watching."
Balaam was out here. Oh wait, never mind.
Yeah, he left.
Well, you know where my window is.
Yeah, he's like, "All right, well, should we go in there for some tea? I think I might need my energy."
You just might.
Okay, so the two of you can like take a couple minutes before you go back inside if there's you
Yeah.
want to quote unquote finish up. Okay, so back inside, at this point, you guys hear another bell ring. It's a much softer, gentler bell. And everyone has sort of arranged themselves back in the sitting room. Callus and Sildar are sitting close to one another, and Grigwin is sort of sitting off in the corner. And everyone sort of gets themselves rearranged back in the sitting room. And they bring out tea and coffee and little cakes and what have you. Like little lemon cookies, stuff like that. And the halfling comes out with a tray, and she's got this really large tray of assorted cookies and stuff. And I think Alton, you kind of notice like she keeps kind of looking at you, like she's definitely making some eye contact as she puts down the cookies, and all the her and her two assistants kind of line up and look at everybody and smile, and she says, "Well, this is the final bell. If you require anything further," I said, "we will be in the kitchen cleaning up. I hope you all enjoyed the meal. Thank you very much for the opportunity." And they all sort of give a quick bow and like a little nod, and then they start to make their way out. And as they do, Alton the halfling definitely looks at you again and heads back, and they all head back into the kitchen.
As she looks back, I give her a very well, not really, a discreet wink and a smile.
Yeah, and you can see as her head is turning away from you, her lips are curling up into a smile as she walks back into the kitchen. So there's this whole array of cookies and what have you. And Grigwin basically doesn't hesitate. She goes immediately and starts grabbing herself a couple cakes and puts them on like a little plate and takes them back over to her little chair in the corner. And Sildar begins to stand up, and Callus actually puts a hand on her, and he goes over and fixes them 2 plates, brings her one and has himself one. And then anyone else is, of course, free to get themselves, to feed themselves as you see fit.
Celinda will definitely take a couple.
Okay. Yeah, you and Alistair like come back into the room. Elizabeth, what's going on between you and Asher?
She seems a little uncomfortable with him. More but it's clear that it's nothing he specifically has done, if that's possible. She just seems, again, he knows something happened in the room, but he's not sure what. But she gets up kind of stiffly, takes tea, doesn't get anything to snack on, and then just kind of sits down next to him. She's still like physically, like she sits close to him and stuff, but like she's distracted, I guess is the best.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so Alistair like doesn't like he gets up when you get up, and he takes himself over to the table, and you know, if you pour yourself a glass of tea, he'll pour himself a glass of tea as well, and he doesn't get into
Wait, Alistair or Asher?
Asher, sorry.
Okay.
This is what happens when you
Yeah, I
name
was
everyone with
confused
A's. Yeah.
Well, I'm just making sure this isn't going to be a follow-up thing, so.
Yeah, it's Asher, not Alistair, sorry.
Oh,
So
let's
good.
just hope we don't call out the wrong names while we're in bed.
So
Not going to be a problem.
so Asher kind of stands up with you, and he pours himself some tea, and he's gently putting his hands on you. He's not, like he'll rub the small of your back, but he doesn't say anything. Like he realizes there's some tension, and he's trying to deal with that. So the two of you go back and sit down, and everyone kind of quietly, like a little more conversation creeps up, but it's kind of end of night sort of stuff. And Callus, I think, comes over to you, Reginald, at some point. Or actually, no, Sildar comes over to you, and she says, "Reggie, if you'd like, I'm happy to make a plate for your son, your daughter-in-law, if they'd like something."
We have our own cook still, I'm sure, but this was quite a lovely meal.
Yeah, she, and there's like a familiarity between you two. She doesn't seem uncomfortable with you, and she kind of steps in close to you. She says, "Reginald, I wish words were enough to express my gratitude for what you've done for me and my family. What are your plans? Are you going back to work on the business?"
Yes, I think after all this, I need some time on the road again. And actually, Valem, his family has a tavern in Waterdeep, and I believe the rest of Cylinder and their friends are heading there, so I thought I might accompany them and see if I can expand the wine business north.
I think when you say that, you notice that there's like a tension you didn't realize. Like you unburden her when you say that. Like she looks relieved. And she says to you, and she kind of like, she doesn't turn her head, but she kind of tries to gauge where everyone is sitting so no one can hear her. And she just says to you, "I admit it's not something I should want, but I have to admit I'm glad. I was hoping that you might say that. You will keep an eye out on her, won't you? She ran away once, and I had no ability to stop her. I figure if she's going to do it again, and she sighs, she's going to. At least if I know I have an old friend there and someone I trust to watch over her, I would feel infinitely better, and I know Callus would as well."
Of course, dear Sildar. I would be more than happy to keep an eye on her, but she is quite capable of protecting herself and others. You should know she is very powerful with her magics.
Yeah, and she laughs a little bit, like a little tense laugh. She says, "Oh yes, I know quite well. She was."
But
she was
maybe
out,
I can. Sorry, you go ahead.
She said she was out of control for Grigwin since she was about 9 years old. I know she's powerful, Reginald. I'm not concerned about that. I just want her to come home.
Well, I'll make sure she understands that, and hopefully, maybe tempers some of her actions.
Good. Thank you. And again, thank you very much for everything you've done. when you come home, we'll have a much more splendid party with our old friends. Like knowing that the implicit joke there is that you guys weren't big on like
Yeah.
many friends. Like she gets it, you get the joke. And you both kind of like share a little laugh, and she kind of puts her arm on the back of your arm, and she reaches up to give you a kiss on the cheek.
And I'll kind of kiss her back on the cheek and say, "You take care of yourself and Kalis now. It is good to see you both well again, and damn it, I worked hard to make that happen."
Yeah, she smiles. She says, I will, of course, take very good care of him. I'm not going to let him out of my sight for quite some time. She says, and I think you can kind of see, like, when you're speaking of Callus, like, this man, Callus is not jealous at all. Like, he sees you exchange kisses, like, on the cheek, and, like, you notice, like, he's just got this, like, smile on his face watching the two of you. It's just like watching old friends come back together. And, yeah, she, the two of you, like, share this little moment. She says, take care of yourself, old friend.
I'll try to.
Yeah, and she kind of departs and heads back. And I think what's also happening in the meantime, because everyone else is doing this, Alton, because you started it, you're like messing with your mage hand. You're like mage handing yourself cookies. And then Selenda starts to do it. And I think
She starts stealing them out of the air from his.
Oh, well then what's going to inevitably happen is Griegwin's going to get involved. And she's basically going to try to slap your mage hands with her mage hand out of the way. So there's like a three-way slap fest going on between invisible hands with cookies in the middle of the air, and crumbs are starting to fly all over the room. And I think Griegwin's got like a little smile on her face, like she seems to be enjoying it. Like this is, a little bit of fun for her, maybe. Okay, so you guys everything kind of quiets down, and
Where was Bellion?
he was on the roof.
I mean,
talking
that's like Celinda actually asking that. I don't think Bellion told her. I don't think she knows.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if anybody else knows. Yeah, you just he kind of disappeared.
What a weird man.
Hopefully not in jail again.
Oh God, please no. He's too useful.
It's the again that's worrisome.
Well, he was in jail when we met him.
Well,
Then,
to be fair, he was kind of enslaved when we met him.
Yes, but he should have been in jail when he met him. When we met him, they just decided to take him.
Okay, so I think Asher looks to you, Elizabeth, and he kind of quietly says on the couch, "It's getting late. I was going to head home." And like, there's that implication right at the end, like, "Are you coming with me?"
And Beth would actually look up to Lady Icewing and Kalis and Sir and Lady Baroness, looking at Celinda and Icewing. I don't know quite how to say this. Do you mind if we excuse ourselves for the evening?
Oh no, of course not. It's getting rather late. Please. And like they're both kind of sitting next to each other, getting a little cuddly together. And no, of course. And they both stand up, and Callus comes over, and they basically escort you to the front door. And Callus reaches down to you, Elizabeth, and he's going to try to kiss you on the cheek.
She's awkward about it. Like, she kind of goes to do tiptoes, but then realizes that I would imagine they're of somewhat similar heights.
Mm-hmm.
And Asher's a little taller, so that's what she's used to, but she does turn her cheek.
Okay. Yeah, and you feel him just like barely brush his lips across your cheek. And then he releases you, and Sildara puts her hands out and takes your hands in hers. And she's more aggressive with you because there's a bit more familiarity there.
Yeah.
And Callus begins to, shake Asher's hand, and the two of them begin to have like a little brief, like, good night thing. And Sildara pulls you in close and starts, she's getting very friendly with you. And she reaches in to give you another hug, and she just whispers, what does she whisper? That's not going to be really dirty.
Use protection, Beth.
No, she says, he's a good man. I know you'll treat him well. You should expect the same, always.
And Beth will hold her for a moment, again with that same similar familiarity. I agree. And if I could be so bold, Alistair is not that bad either. Give him a chance.
Yeah, and she says, I suspect you might be right, but you know I lost my daughter once, and I don't want to lose her again.
Then think of it this way, Lady Icewing. And she'll going to give a side eye to Asher.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, I'll drag her home. Because I've got reason to return to the city myself.
Yeah, and she cocks an eyebrow, and she says, yes, you do. She said, we'll have breakfast in the morning. I'm sure you'll need your strength. And she gives you a kiss on the cheek, and she kind of breaks away the hug. And Callus reaches over and opens the front door.
And she'll just kind of nod to Asher. And again, I think there's that stumble of he goes to go or hold the door, and then she goes to go, and just she'll start giggling at that point, like a break of tension.
Okay, yeah.
And then flip out in front of him.
Okay, so yeah, you guys begin to leave, and Sildar and Callus are there, waving the two of you out. And I think you see Sildara sort of lean into Callus a little bit, she physically leans her whole body into his, and he wraps his arm around her as they watch you guys leave, and they wave as you walk away down the street. So they come back into the room. I think at this point, Grigwin is probably starting to fall asleep in the chair. What is everyone else doing?
I'm using a mage hand to hold a cookie just over her snout.
Okay. Sure.
I'm putting a cookie on her snout.
So Celinda and Alden are having a game where you guys try to stack cookies on her snout. And I think your mother walks back in and sees this. And she looks at you, Celinda, like she's going to chide you. There's no chance she's not. But then she sees Alton doing something too. And she just puts her hands on her hips. In that very motherly fashion. And she just says, kind of quietly, but loud enough for the room to hear, it is getting late, you know.
Yes, Mother.
That it is, lady.
Okay.
I think it's my time for me to head out as well.
Okay. And yeah, Callus absolutely will. You've already basically said your goodbyes with Sildara, but Callus will definitely meet you at the door. And he gives you a little brief speech about should you need anything, you have a friend here, you have, this is a second family, what you've done, he owes you the world, and he's willing to do whatever you need.
Yeah, and I'll say, thanks, you guys have always been kind to me and good friends, and I'm sure you'd have done the same. But if you do ever feel, more indebted, I'm sure they could use your help on the vineyard again.
Yeah, and he looks a little there's a little bit of confusion, and he just sort of nods and smiles. He said, and I think he pats his tummy. He says, could be good work, I suppose. He said maybe you and I could find our way there together.
Well, I'm on my way to Waterdeep after this, but
yeah, and he
when I return.
Yeah, and he puts his hand on your shoulder. He said, "Be safe, friend." He said, I'll see you soon."
Yes, of course. You too.
Okay, so yeah, you make your departures, and Reginald heads home for the night. Okay. I guess who's left? Celinda and Alistair and Alton.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think at this point, Alistair does that thing where he makes an visible yawn. He's like, "Well, it's getting pretty late. I suppose I should leave. Everyone else is doing the same. So, Baron Icewing, it's It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Food was delicious, as was the company. And Callus comes over and like gives Alistair like a hearty handshake, and says kind of quietly to him. He said, "Thank you for everything you've done for my family." Alistair's like, "Right, yeah, sure." He said, "Hope I'm not doing things to your family yet." And he like turns around and gives you an obvious wink, Celinda. And like Sildara like sighs so loud, she's so disgusted. And he looks to your mother, and she comes over to him actually, and um she just quietly says, "We owe you much. Thank you." And he says, kind of quietly, he's like, "Of course, milady. Was an honor." And she like reaches up and just very, very quickly gives him a tiny peck on the cheek. And like
Well, she just raises her eyebrows at that. Like,
yeah, she and Callus sort of like begin to head over and to sit back down on their couch. Like, doesn't make a show of it, just does it and like goes to leave. And Alistair kind of turns to you, like tries to be subtle about it. He's like, "All right, well, thank you again, Lady Icewing." And like he tries to like in a very subtle fashion gives you like a thumbs up that he thinks your mother can't see. Like, got approval from mom.
she'll walk him out.
Okay, so you go to the front door,
Mhm.
and like he just says, "Thank you very much." Like he's being overly loud about it so that your parents can hear him. He's like, "Thank you very much for a good evening, lady. I hope that our mutual relationship, friendship, will blossom from here." And then, like, he leans in really fast. He says, "How long shall I wait?"
You're adorable. Just, I'll be up soon. And she casts fly on him and
Okay.
gives him a kiss.
Okay. Yeah, so you
Don't
kiss
let you
him,
hurting
and then
that leg of yours.
he starts to, like, he realizes, like, he can fly, so he, like, looks to you. He's like,
Only got 10 minutes.
okay. Camera smash cuts to 10 minutes later. Alistair is completely broken on an alleyway floor, like a mile away from the house. No. So, okay. So you let him go. The door walks away. I think as the door closes, you can hear like a muffled scream, like of excitement, of joy, as like he begins to fly around like Peter Pan.
I knew it'd like that.
Okay.
She just shakes her head and laughs because it kind of reminds her of Drajan.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So do you say goodnight to your parents, or do you?
Yeah,
just...
she'll go back in and say goodnight to her parents.
Okay. And your father, comes up and he stands to you and he says, he said, "I know this wasn't the smoothest night for you, but I'm glad you were here for it. I do owe you and your friends a great debt of gratitude."
Well, I just wish Mother would be nicer to him.
And yeah, he kind of turns and looks at her a little bit, and she's trying not to glare at you. He says, "Give her time, dear. Took her quite a while to warm up to me."
I like him a lot, Father.
He says, "Well, I'm not sure I entirely trust your judgment, but I should trust you."
I don't think I do either, but I trust him.
Yeah, and he looks a little like miffed, like all right,
What
He
kind
says-
of woman would I be if I didn't trust the people I cared about?
That's a very mature thing to say. He said, "I, for one, am exhausted. I'm going to put myself to bed as soon as I clean up Grigwin." And you see, like, she's snoring and some of the cookie crumbs are, like, falling down her snout. And, like, he kind of turns and gives you a kiss and a little hug, and he turns away. And, like, you notice your mother stood up, and she's, like, making her way towards you.
Mm-hmm.
She says,
Oh, wait.
"I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Celinda, I am. You don't
I
know
know
what it
you
did
do.
to us when you left. You don't know."
Well, if you keep acting like this, I might just leave again.
And she looks really hurt when you say that.
I promised I wouldn't. But You've got to let me make my own decisions. I'm 25, Mother.
I know, dear. I know. If he makes you happy and you feel safe around him, then fine. But
If
just
it
know.
doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and she says, just know that I worry. It's my right as your mother to worry.
I know.
I don't want to take your decisions. I'm not trying to steal your agency. I want you to come home in one piece.
I will try. But I have to help Balaam.
I understand, dear.
He helped me so much with you, Father. I owe it to him.
I know, dear. I know. Just come back in one piece, please.
I will do my best. I'm stronger than you think.
I know. And she like leans in to give you a hug, and as she does so, she kind of whispers quietly. She says, I have to admit, he is rather handsome. And she like she ends the hug and just does not even look at you and just turns to walk back to Callus.
She just snickers and goes back up to her room. Yep.
Okay.
I thought so.
Okay.
Damn bird. Shut up.
Kill it. Kill it with fire.
I wish I could.
So, Alton, you are the last. You go into the kitchen, where the halfling chef and her assistants are cleaning up, doing dishes and what have you, and packing up other like food ingredients and that sort of thing. And the door kind of creaks open, and she turns around, and the assistants kind of turn and look at you. Oh, hello, sir. Is there something else you require?
Just once again to give my compliments and to say if you ever find yourself down in do look up the Brown Bread family. They would happily love to talk to you.
Ah, yes, thank you. I will keep this in mind. There's nothing else you might require?
Well, there is something I wanted to talk to you about. So once your assistants are set up,
Well, they can step outside, and she like snaps her fingers, and because there's a door that leads, I imagine, out of the kitchen, like outside or what have you, and they just sort of shoo off, and she looks at you rather expectantly. She said, "Yes, what is it?"
once again, just my compliments to an absolutely lovely woman on a lovely evening.
Ah, thank you. And like she snaps her fingers, and she turns around, and like as the camera tracks her face, she looks obviously disappointed. And the assistants come rushing back in, and they go right back to the sinks and cleaning. She says she doesn't turn back when she says this to you. She just says, "Have a good evening, sir," and she like goes back to her work.
I'm going to just very quietly, so to speak, telepathically go, of course, if you'd like to exchange recipes, we could do so upstairs.
Yeah, and like, okay, yeah. All right. So like she says nothing, and you like turn to leave. Um, I'm imagining you go upstairs. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I now know there's a guest room, damn it.
True. Okay. So everyone makes their way to bed. Grigwin is left snoring in her chair after she's been cleaned up of cookie crumbs. Callus and Sildara both, greet you and wave you good night and thank you and go through the motions. And then you head up to bed. I imagine at this point, Elizabeth and Asher, Jesus Christ.
Too many days.
I know, too many. Lesson learned. Of course, we already know there's another A coming in Waterdeep, so that's cool.
Lovely.
That was smart of me. So Elizabeth and Asher are probably racing home, I imagine, unless.
Oh no,
Are they gonna take a carriage?
not in that dress.
Okay, are you walking home?
Yeah, I mean, she wouldn't know anything about like a carriage, like how to call one or anything. So yeah, she'd be okay to walk. It's just she could not race in that dress.
True. Okay, I definitely think that Asher is going to. It might be an awkward walk home because he wants to ask. He's like, I noticed you grew rather distant from me. Do I have reason for concern? Did I do something wrong?
No. But I guess. Oh, shit. I guess this needs to be said, or maybe it doesn't, but this, and she'll kind of motion to the dress, isn't me changing for you, but seeing. I guess I'm trying it out for myself. I am trying to impress you. I was trying to impress you, but I don't have any intentions of changing. Does that make sense?
And he laughs, like he starts to smile and begins to laugh. He said, I didn't.
And she'll just kind of nod.
And like he looks at you and he says, this is not the you that I fell in love with. And like look like,
Oh,
like he like
shit.
looks away from you. I just heard Jason yelling in the background. Yeah, so he like turns away, like he doesn't want to look at you right after he says it.
And she like has that moment of
And like he just reaches. I don't know. Are you walking arm in arm or how? Like what is
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Again, physically she's not distant. It's just like her mind has been elsewhere
Yeah.
since Linda snapped at her.
Yeah. So he starts like rubbing your hand. He says, "I'm sorry. I thought you knew." He said,
I
like he sees you stammering. He says, I expect nothing from you. If you, I would not have fallen in love with this. You are beautiful as always, but I know this isn't you. Just as this, and he like beckons to himself. This isn't really me.
but it's what we must do sometimes.
Indeed.
And she'll just kind of nod. And
Yeah.
I
And
don't want
he
to
like
ruin
smiles
the-
at you and says, I mean, at the very least, I get to watch you get out of that get up. And he like blushes a little bit as he says it.
And she blinks. No, you might have to help me because it took 2 assistants to get me into it.
Oh. And like he perks up a little bit. He's like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, and at that point, again, the tension is broken. Her mind is back in the game, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
But again, she got that off her chest. She didn't return the phrasing yet,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but she's clearly it's noted, and she's not upset about it.
Okay. All right. So you guys make your way back to Asher's brownstone. Celinda, after going up to bed, trying to think how this would work. Yeah, like I think the minute you open your door to your bedroom, like he's floating outside of the window.
You could have come in,
And like I think as he's floating, like you see that he started to like pull his clothes off. So like he's like pulling his jacket off at like as he's like floating in the air just waiting for you.
She just kind of smiles and she walks to her vanity. The neighbors will talk.
I'm assuming you're imagining the window is open here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, and he's just like floating there. He's like, "Well, I let him get a view." He said, and it like dawns on him as he's saying, he's like, "Wait a minute, can you do this to you as well? We could do it in the air. Come on, let's go." And he like goes to reach for you, like to pull you out the window.
Ooh, no. It only lasts 10 minutes. You're gonna. She just grabs him and tries to like pull him in. You're horrible. Let's get in here.
Okay, so you pull him inside, and he's like,
Maybe later.
He's like tripping on himself, trying not to, like pulling his clothes off while he's flying. So the two of you settle in, and Asher, Jesus, Alton. After maybe like 20 or 30 minutes, you head up to bed. You hear a gentle rapping at the door.
At this point, my illusion has undoubtedly faded, so I'm just going to answer in pretty much just breeches because I was getting ready for hopefully company, but just in case bed.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And like, do you open the door just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. And there's the chef, and she's got a little platter, and she's got like a little pitcher of tea. She says, like she begins like as she notices that you're really not wearing anything. She says, "I was going to offer you a nightcap." And she literally just pushes her way in, puts the platter down, grabs you, and like throws you on the bed as the door closes, and we fade to black.
Well, damn.
Wow, Alton.
Okay, so yeah, so we fade to black on 3 scenes. Um, Bellion, you've probably heard some of this from on the roof, at least what was going on with Selenda and.
I probably fucking saw it.
Well, no, I don't imagine that you could have seen it from. Like, you might have heard it, but like you'd have to position yourself specifically if you wanted to watch.
You probably saw Alistair like doing loops in
Yeah,
the sky
exactly.
Oh yeah, you would have seen that. I sorry,
And he's getting down towards the window, already ripping off clothes. It's like, okay, yeah,
Oh God, there's probably
that happens.
clothes all over the garden now.
Not for long.
Yeah, there's like loose, like there's like a rogue sock that fell on like a little statuesque or something that sits in the garden.
Is there anything important outside?
What
Did he
do
lose his pants anywhere?
No, he would have his pants on still.
Damn.
Yeah.
I'm sad now.
Okay.
No theft of pants.
All right. So we fade to black on those 3 scenes. Before we'll take a break here in a minute. Before we do, Valem, you would have like gone out and returned and gone to bed, I assume.
Yeah, because I've been sleeping in the foyer, I wasn't going to stick around and wait for all that to end. So yeah, whatever tavern inn I could go to get something to eat and then go to bed. That's
Okay.
pretty much all I do.
Okay. And Bellion, you're sleeping on the roof.
After probably stealing as much food as humanly possible from downstairs.
Sure. Yeah, you can
In
totally.
the middle of the night.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So we fade to black on those scenes. Why don't we take our break here?
Okay.
Let's meet
All right.
back here at. Oh no, I forgot where my keybinds are. Did I stop? I didn't.